In this video, we're going to be discussing how to replace a mechanical seal in our model SSPC pump. We have several models that use the same type 16 mechanical seal, so this replacement will work on most of our models. I'm removing the 8 case bolts with a T-handled wrench. The size of that wrench is a 3/16 inch Allen. You can use any 3/16 Allen, but I find the T-handle makes it a lot easier to remove the case bolts. Since it's a stainless bolt into a stainless part, sometimes there is some galling. We use a little bit of food grade anti-seize when we install the bolts, and that kind of helps with the galling. Now every back plug is different in every motor. The NIDEC motors are particularly difficult to get out, so we made a special tool, but you're going to need some small needle nose pliers to pull that back plug out. Now you can see the access to the rear of the shaft. Most of them have a slot for a screwdriver or a flat for a wrench. So I'm going to insert the screwdriver into the back to hold the shaft in place so it won't rotate, and then I can just unscrew the impeller. Sometimes they're more difficult to get off of the shaft if they've been in the field for a long time. So there's a little trick in another one of our YouTube videos. So when you take off the seal, if you're going to plan on cleaning it and reusing it, you don't want to chip it on the shaft. So you got to be very careful when you slide it off. Now here I'm going to flip over the seal plate, and I'm going to push the stationary half of the seal out with a screwdriver. You can use a socket or anything you need to push that out. But again, if you're planning on just cleaning the seal and putting it back in, you want to be careful not to chip the faces. So when you get the new seal out of the package, you want to make sure that you clean the faces. And we use a lint-free rag with some isopropyl alcohol, something that will get rid of any debris, fingerprints. If anything is between those seal faces, you have the possibility of a leak. So you want to do everything you can to prevent that. So this is my solution of water with a couple drops of soap. You can use just dishwasher soap, would be fine. You want to lubricate the elastomer on the outside, the cup. If you have an O-ring mounted stationary seal, you want to get a little bit of soapy water on the outside of that O-ring. So I'm using the back end of a screwdriver here. In production, we actually have an arbor press to make sure that that's center, and you want to turn it over to the back and make sure that there's not a gap between the bottom of the seal and that seal plate bore. You want the seal to be pressed in all the way, so rotate it around, make sure there's no big gaps. If the stationary seal is cocked in there, your seal is not going to run properly against that stationary seal face. So when I put this seal plate on, I want to make sure that I don't nick the inside with the shaft. I'm going to carefully slide it over and align the holes as best you can. You want to make sure that the ID of the stationary seal is not rubbing on the shaft. So now I'm cleaning the rotating half with a lint-free rag and some isopropyl alcohol to make sure I don't have any debris or fingerprints on it. I'm going to lubricate the inside diameter, the bellows that are on that rotating seal, but then I'm shaking it off to make sure that there's no liquid remaining or getting onto the rotating seal face. So I slide it gently over the shaft, and now I'm using a tool that will press the rotating half all the way down so that the faces meet, but I don't want to over press it. I don't want to press the seal past the shoulder of the shaft. If you do, it's fine as long as the rotating seal springs back so that it's above the shoulder of the shaft. When I screw on my impeller here, that will compress the rotating seal and stop it at the correct point. So it basically stops when the impeller hits the shoulder on the shaft. So there I'm putting a screwdriver in the back of the motor to make sure that the impeller is completely tight and up against the shoulder of that shaft. Now I'm going to place the casing over the impeller. You want to make sure that you're not pinching the impeller O-ring that is in the groove of that suction nozzle. And I'm going to hand tighten these bolts in there. We use a little bit of food grade anti-seize on these screws. If you put them on without, it's stainless on stainless, so there has the possibility of galling. So just a little tiny bit of anti-seize will prevent that from galling. And it's not going to be a big deal now, but if you ever have to take this casing off again, it helps to have it on there. So I'm going to hand tighten them as much as I can, and then I'm going to follow it up with a torque wrench. We use 8 foot-pounds to tighten these bolts. So right there I'm showing that the impeller is centered, it's not pinched. It's kind of hard to see in this video, but that's what you're looking for right there. So I'm setting this to 96 inch-pounds or 8 foot-pounds. We use an air ratchet in production. It doesn't have to be perfect, you just don't want to over tighten these bolts or snap any of them off. So as I tighten this, I'm looking down the center of that suction nozzle to make sure that the casing is centered around the impeller shroud. If you tighten all 4 bolts on one side too much, you're not necessarily going to center it properly. So you want to try to use a cross pattern, but you want to keep that casing as centered as you can. There's a little bit of play because these are stamped parts, but as long as you're paying attention and you're not jamming the case to one side, it should be fine. So all I'm doing is making sure that I'm touching all of the bolts. And like I said, this isn't rocket science, so you can take your hand and just double check and make sure you got them all tight. It should be fine. Now I'm going to put the back plug in, and I'm going to use a rubber mallet to just kind of pop it into place. You don't need to hit it too hard. Most of the motors don't even require this. You can just pop it in with your hands. And now your pump is ready to go and put into the system. Please give us a call if you have any more questions or if you'd like a copy of our written work instructions. Thanks for using our pump.